In 1981, the philosopher Alasdair MacIntyre published the first edition of his important book, After Virtue. As the book's subtitle makes plain, MacIntyre's arguments are a contribution to moral theory. And at the center of many of these arguments is MacIntyre's much-discussed definition of a practice. But what exactly is a practice? According to MacIntyre, a practice is, quote, any coherent and complex form of socially established cooperative human activity through which goods internal to that form of activity are realized in the course of trying to achieve those standards of excellence which are appropriate to and partially definitive of that form of activity, with the result that human powers to achieve excellence and human conceptions of the ends and goods involved are systematically extended, end quote. Examples of practices then include poker, baseball, beekeeping, making yogurt, and playing the drums in a jazz trio. MacIntyre's various examples include chess, architecture, farming, the enquiries of physics, chemistry, and biology, as he puts it, the work of the historian, painting, and music. Each of these activities has corresponding standards of excellence, to use MacIntyre's terms, that arise within and structure the activity itself, rather than being imposed from without. Importantly, MacIntyre distinguishes practices on the one hand from what we might call techniques on the other hand, such that the game of football, let's say, is a practice, whereas throwing a football well is merely a technique that the quarterback seeks to master in order better to participate in the practice of football itself. More generally, a technique will be unintelligible apart from its practical context, whereas a practice will not be unintelligible in that way. Thus, a technique is employed instrumentally in order to achieve the goods internal to its corresponding practice, while the practice itself is an activity pursued non-instrumentally as partially constitutive of a good life. The standards of excellence of any particular practice provide those who participate in the practice with relatively concrete specifications of some of their ends in life, and these ends constrain the participants' practical reasoning. A shortstop, for example, is subject in his play to certain standards of excellence that have arisen within the practice of baseball over the course of its history as successive shortstops have creatively pushed the boundaries of their particular roles as members of their teams. On account of Cal Ripken Jr.'s many accomplishments as longtime shortstop for the Baltimore Orioles, for example, a shortstop today is generally expected not only to play good defense, but to be a power hitter too, as the careers of Nomar Garciaparra, Derek Jeter, and Alex Rodriguez, among others, have amply demonstrated. Such standards of excellence partially structure a shortstop's practical identity in that they partially structure the activities that constitute his life. We could say much the same of those who participate in other practices as well. This is all important because, like Aristotle, MacIntyre understands human happiness to consist in activities of certain kinds. This sort of theory is often called by academic philosophers today eudaimonist, in reference to the Greek word eudaimonia, which we have seen Aristotle use to describe the highest human good. As Aristotle understands it, eudaimonia is clearly active. It is not a passive, subjective state, but rather involves acting, and acting well. In After Virtue, MacIntyre situates this eudaimonist way of thinking about human happiness within an account of human life in which practices play a key role.